So, Mr. Perry Power, thank you for joining me. I want to express a huge welcome to you. You do have the best name going in the industry. But Perry, you are a best-selling author on Amazon in the sexual abuse and mental health category. You've been a speaker in TEDx. You're an early adopter and crush it in TikTok with millions of likes, which is pretty damn awesome. You have co-founded a charity called We Rescue Kids. I know you as the prolific entrepreneur and storyteller in business. And on top of all of this, you are heavily investing yourself into acting and film directing and building another business. Perry, thank you for joining me, man. There's a long intro, but very well deserved for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I appreciate it. It's so good to be here. We're boys, and it's good to be on a podcast and chatting, man. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. And Perry, you're only 28, 27 right now?
27.
27. Man, you've accomplished so much already. It's majorly exciting for what's to come.
I appreciate it. And that I saw a post, I think it was yesterday, the day before, and somebody was like, I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but it was along the lines of slave it away for the next 5 years, and then that 6th year is all going to pay off. There's something like that, right? And I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, damn, that is so true, because everything you just said there has come within the last, I'd say, year and a half.
Incredible.
And I've been doing this since I was 19, 20.
Yep.
So
going through the struggle, going through the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming to fruition is awesome to see. So, Perry, what I wanted to do was reverse the clocks a little bit to when we first met, and something that I view as a little bit of a trigger for you, kind of a start of some of your journey. And that was the business mastermind that you attended, that I was helping in leading back in 2018. I thought this would be the perfect way to ignite this conversation today, pretty much jump straight into the deep end with you. But I wanted to actually get that experience from your perspective. So this was the 5-day mastermind that you attended, where we was in Bath, I think it was.
It was Bath.
You first started to share your story and delve into it. So yeah, give me an insight from your perspective. What do you remember about that experience?
This is crazy, actually. I don't know why, but before this podcast, I didn't even think about how this part of the conversation was going to go down, because we've never actually talked about it. As far as I'm aware, we've never actually talked about that event. So this is going to be interesting. So I went to a business, as you know, the Business Mastermind Conference. I had a company at the time called the Fit Parent Movement, right?
Yep.
And as the name suggests, it was a movement for fit parents. Now, I remember going to this event, and I was sitting down, and we had James and George at the front, right? Then I think was you sitting next to me, Sam? Was you behind me? Because you took the photo. No, you was next to me.
Yeah, actually, I was sat next to you on the sofa.
You was sitting next to me, because I remember I'm thinking of the photo, and you were sitting on my right-hand side, right? Yeah. So I was on the edge, like we're sitting around in like a half a circle, and I was on one edge. And I remember James being like, right, we're just going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. And bearing in mind, I literally had no idea why these voices were in my head, but James was like, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, okay, don't put me first. Now, I'm not a shy guy, right? Like I'm very happy to go first, to be in the center of a group, whatever it is, right? So it wasn't from me being shy because of don't talk to me type of thing. But for some reason, I was like, don't come to me first. I need to think about how I'm going to introduce myself here. And then they're going, and I remember, I can't remember his name, but James went to the one guy, and he was talking about himself. And I remember just sitting there. I heard what he was saying. Then all of a sudden, the whole room just went mute, right? Because I was in my own head, completely in my own head. My lips were drying, my throat was drying. I was thinking to myself, right, Perry, don't be surface level. I'm like, hi, my name's Perry. I've got a fitness company, and I'm just here to learn to grow my business. Like, when you finish that sentence, nobody has no idea who I am. Who are you? Well, yeah, we're all here to do the same thing, but who are you actually, right? And I think I just got to, which we'll probably dive into a bit later, but dominoes happened right beforehand that led to this moment. And I was sitting there, and then I just hear, and this actual moment is going to be in the movie that I'm doing. This is how this actually plays out as well. I've written it, like, I'll get onto it, but like the script is done, and there is this moment in the script where they're like, Perry, and I look up, and James like, Jorgo. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, all right, it's on me now. I'm like, my name is Perry. And then boom, I don't actually remember what I said, right? In that introduction, I actually don't remember any of the words that I said. To be honest, I don't even remember saying hi, my name's Perry. I actually have no idea how I started. I know what I said, as in like, I know what I released, and what I released was about my story in some parts. And I think I did. I talked about the abuse, and then I talked about my dad's death. And I was talking about the business. And then I remember the whole time, right? I was just staring at the floor. I wasn't looking at anyone. I'm looking at that floor, and I'm speaking. And then I stopped speaking. I'm like, all right, Perry, look up. And I look up, and sort of James and George they were looking at me. Then they sort of looked at each other. And then James was like, I need to introduce you to someone. And then that someone was oh, you guys used to know him. I'm pretty sure, I think he runs a fitness business now. He ended up, I'm pretty sure.
That doesn't help. I speak to thousands.
Yeah, I know it doesn't. I'm pretty sure he did a training, or maybe not, but I know at the time his dad passed away. He was good friends with all of you lot at that time. Oh, what's his name? I know he used to live in like
Simon?
What, Lovell?
No,
not Simon. No.
We'll come back to the name.
Yeah, we'll come back to it anyway. So James, I'm going to introduce you to a guy because his dad recently passed away. And then that happened. And then in the first break of the event, right? In the first break, is it Marin, the girl that was there? Marin, yeah. She then comes out. What, Mal? That was it. Mal. Mal then comes over to me, and I'm pretty sure she gave me a hug, or she did something extremely comforting. And she's like, just to let you know that, thank you for sharing. You've literally just opened up the whole group to connect.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So that was when that happened.
I think from my memory of that, like you mentioned, you didn't stand up and shout this thing with confidence, and some of that trauma and some of the really tough times that you went through, it was kind of that first breaking of the ice, in the fact that you almost didn't mean to share it in a way. It was like, oh, this is me. Oh, this is what I've survived. This is what I've done. And it was like a realization for you then. And I think from the outside looking in, seeing part of that journey, it was one, that realization, but then you stepped into it and you were like, wow, I've shared this. And it was almost like, whoa, what have I just opened? Like, what world have I now just opened? Just release that, secret, and the challenges that you've been keeping quiet for, however long. You found that courage somehow. And for whatever reason, that was the right time for you to go through that. And I think it was so interesting, and obviously a painful experience, but one that's now, where you look at where you are today and what you've done and the thousands of people that you've now impacted, it was a necessary struggle in a way, yes, to think what you achieved since just then, 2018, it's incredible, literally. And, I look at that now. You mentioned there, you didn't necessarily have the courage, but that was the first sign of that courage coming through. And I look at you as someone who's done so many big leaps in their career. You've wrote best-selling book in a category that not many people would stand up and shout about. You've done a TEDx talk. You've started and co-founded a charity, right? You've done some of these amazing things. You've changed your career, the pathway, so many times. How do you keep finding the courage to back yourself in those situations?
I think I'm just a big part of it is the fact that I'm just such a strong believer in that everything we go through, there's a reason behind it. And that yeah, today might be an utter crap day, but tomorrow is going to be better, right? And always the tomorrow is going to be better. This moment that I'm going through right now is for a reason that always gets me through it every single time. And I don't know, I don't know why, but ever since I was a kid, there has been parts of myself where there's just been an insane amount of confidence, right? Like, for example, with acting, a lot of people would have let go of that dream by now, right? Because they've been doing it since they were a kid, and the industry is too difficult, or I got other responsibilities now. For me, it always has been. It's not an if I'm going to be an actor and make Hollywood movies. It's always been a when. It's going to happen. There's like, it's not. It's like in this glass here, there's water, and that's a fact,
Yeah.
right? I literally see it the same as a fact as that. And I think like some of that confidence spills through into other areas too. Like that with the charity, right? I co-founded that charity when I was living in a house with no furniture because I was too broke to afford any furniture. I was literally sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag. My dog Amara was in her bed next to me on the floor, and I launched a charity. A lot of people, and I'm not saying that was the right thing to do, but it happened, which means it was the right thing to do because I've done it, right? But a lot of people would be like, pretty sure you should be launching a business or going to get a job and actually getting money so you can. And whilst that's true, right? Whilst that definitely is true, but I knew that I was on that floor for a reason. I knew that I didn't have the business that I wanted to have right then for a reason. And I knew that the opportunity to do this charity happened at that specific time for a reason too, hence why I done it. So it's like, it comes back to the same belief of, okay, this is happening right now for a reason. It definitely isn't to quit. I'm a master of having my back against the wall and continue moving forward. And I think, yes, the abuse from a child, mum leaving when I was 4, dad passing away in 2017, these things, especially my dad passing away, it's like you watch movies where a parent dies, right? And you can't actually understand what it's like until it actually happens to you. But before, you think you're invincible. I'm not going to lose my parent, especially I'm 27. He was 48. It's not happening anytime soon. Then boom, it happens, and like, wow, okay, I need to get with the picture really quick, or is this going to swallow me up like a black hole? And is that I need to get with this really quick, and it's following that intuition to then embark on the next day and just keep on soldiering on, because you'll know that it's going to pave out the way it's meant to.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because from my point of view, I've been so blessed. I'm super fortunate. And I look at some of that journey that you've been through. You mentioned sexual abuse. You mentioned, I've heard you talk openly about, almost being homeless. I know you talked openly about suicide. I know you talked openly about your dog and some of the challenging times there. And I then see the strength that you've had to pull through some of those times that are just, like you say, inconceivable for most people and for me, and I'm like, wow, you've still managed to show up. You've still managed to then be a leader and a server to other people too. You're still putting other people before yourself all the time in everything that you do. And that for me is like, holy moly, like I can be so much better. I need to be a better human, because if Perry can do all of that, man, what am I doing? What am I doing? So for you, when you look back, through some of these tough times, I massively appreciate it. It's not an easy thing to talk about. But there's going to be people that are listening to this that, they may be going through some really crappy times right now. And that can be anything, right? Like you say, you never know what life's going to throw your way. But what things actually helped you pull through on some of those times? What are some of the things, if you could speak back to your former self there, what advice would you give?
It's, if I go back to, and it's gonna in a way reiterate what I was saying before. If I go back to the time where I had to put my dog down, right? I had to put Amara to sleep, which is, even on top of my dad, worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life. And when the whole, like literally the whole process of it leading up to knowing what was actually going to happen, dealing with all the demons of it, which I still haven't like completely healed from, going actually doing the process of putting her to sleep, and then the aftermath of it, right? And it's the same thing with abuse. They say it's not what what has it go? It's not what a burglar takes from your home, is what they leave behind, right? And that element of leaving behind is like going back to my house, and an empty house with no furniture, which was lonely anyway. But now Mara's not there, and now I'm really on my own, right? And then I ended up falling asleep in her bed, and I remember waking up the next morning, and like in that moment there, like you talked earlier about like suicide and stuff, and there has been not many, but definitely a couple of moments back in that same house where it was literally on the edge, right?
Yeah.
And I remember like there's one of the times where something was going to happen, and I said to myself, I was like, but hold on a second, what's Amara going to do? You got like, nobody is anybody going to go to the house?
Yeah.
You know, maybe give it a couple of days, and then she hasn't eaten, you know. And then I was thinking, I was like, oh, okay, all right, fine, let me just go back home. It's kind of like Afterlife, the TV show with Ricky Gervais, right? And then but then after, when Amara went to sleep, and then that day, it was like, right, whilst this is absolutely horrible to go through right now, it has to have happened for a reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah. I would have had money in my account by now, right? Or she wouldn't have been ill, right? And rapidly declined. She wouldn't have bitten somebody or nearly bitten a kid, right? All these different factors, well, these wouldn't have happened. And it's kind of like when something happens, it's like I put myself into a room, kind of like an investigation room, but not as negative as that sounds. But like I'm sitting in a room with myself, and there's two versions, and I'm asking myself these questions. I'm having this conversation. I do this all the time. I'm like, right, listen, take the emotions out, or try to, or just ask yourself, listen, okay, Amara went to sleep, right? But why? Okay, you don't know the answers yet, but just know that this has obviously happened for a reason. So how about you just get through today, and maybe tomorrow you'll find out that reason. Yeah. You wake up tomorrow, is the answer there today? I don't know. But how about you just continue with your day, and then tomorrow the answer might come up. And the answer will always come up. Maybe the answer was always there, but you just never saw it, or the answer does appear at some stage. You know?
It's so powerful, because even going through that and hearing you talk about some of those difficult times, I appreciate how difficult that is. You still mentioned that you talk about other people and how you can help them. So it's like, again, it's just such a credit to you, and in the strength that you have as a human, as a person that's sharing their journey, and that everything you're doing is just serving other people. And it's so inspiring to see, you know, despite going through some of the hardest challenges people could go through, you're still like, yeah, but how is this helping other people? It's unbelievable. It's awesome.
I think that's also a huge part to it as well, because I know Tony Robbins says that and I'm pretty sure somebody else said it as well, that the root of all suffering comes from self. You know, so it's like, if you're having a bad day, how about you just change that by focusing on somebody? How can I help somebody today? That removes the focus away from yourself. And it's like, for me, like just at a bit of a change, but the message still kind of goes on to what we're saying here. You'll notice that the traditional life coaching industry, the traditional one, right? If you look at, and this is not just me assuming, hands down, no. If you go to a coaching accreditation, whatever, right? You'll notice that not all, but most of the people that go to become a life coach, a traditional life coach, are in pain themselves, right? So they go to become a life coach to go and heal other people's problems, but those problems are what they're currently experiencing, right? So they're becoming accredited as a life coach whilst they're in pain, as opposed to going through the pain themselves and then living whatever they classify as their dream life, right? Whatever they determine that to be, and then helping others, right? But you see what I'm coming at this from? It's like, there is somewhere in them deep down where they're like, let me go and help someone, where really that someone is themselves, but they're separating it, you see?
Yeah, it's one of the most common things in business too, is people typically only start, let's say, helping dads or mums to lose weight once they become a mum themselves and have lost weight.
Yeah,
it's like it's the easiest place to start, is that former version of yourself and help someone else. But yeah, I think people seek that support and that's how they get into it. So it's super, super interesting. I do actually, this is perfect because I wanted to transition into some business, and you've done so much in business. I know you've lent heavily into content, into copy, and people sharing their story, and empowering other people ultimately. And some of that started with the TikTok. It also started with your book as well. What's something that you're most proud of in the content that you've created, or some of the business ventures that you've started? What's the one that sticks out for you?
I think with everything that I've done, it's got to be the book.
Yeah.
It has to be. And before, I thought, the book's going to be good. But I thought, the book was going to be good. But and especially because I was self-publishing it.
Yeah.
Originally, I wanted the book to be your traditional book in bookstores, Waterstones, all that sort of stuff, and I'm not going to settle for anything less for my next book, right? But for that book, so I self-published. I haven't taken a course on how to self-publish. I couldn't. And I remember having a call with somebody, a friend of mine who has a company that helps you self-publish, and it was something like 8 or 9 or 10 grand or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't have the money. And then that caused me to sit on a book for nearly a year and not get it out, right? Yeah. Then I moved to Guildford in Surrey. And I was like, get the book out, dude. I have no idea. That same voice, like in the mastermind, the same voice came through, get the book out. So I had the copy of the book. I put it through Grammarly, the Google Chrome extension, right? Spell checked it continuously. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I went on to Canva, and I got an old acting headshot of mine, put it on, played around with some font. And then I literally just failed whilst walking forward. I was like, right, I guess this is it. And I remember talking to you about it, Sam. He's like, next time you should probably do like a pre-order thing for it, right? I don't know if you remember saying that, yeah? And I was like, oh no, don't tell me I should have done that. Then I went off for hours researching, and then I found out you can't actually do that. If you're self-publishing your own book, you can't do it. If you go through traditional publisher, what have you, then you can do pre-orders. But I was like, oh, okay, fine, that's okay then. And then then I launched the book, and I think to date, it's just over 700 copies, which I'm pretty happy about. And then we talked about those 2 categories as well, and it's done well. And the thing with this book is that it's not just like you read the book and like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. It's people have read the book, and the entirety of the rest of their lives have been changed because of the content of the book. Like the book is also a guide. They could take a pen and they can write their story into the book, and they become the 15th survivor, because there's 14 stories in there too of other survivors. And so it's done tremendously well. So that's been and also that was the catalyst of everything taking off. So a lot of this bulk of like success, or whatever you want to call it, came from the book launch.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I've got the book. It's somewhere on one of my shelves for anyone who's watching the video. Read it back to back as soon as it arrived. So powerful, so powerful. And I think there's the book that's Ready, Fire, Aim, and it's the same concept for you, where you mentioned like you took a long time to actually just hit send, to actually hit save ultimately.
Yeah.
And there's so many times for everyone that we just delay something that we want to do, or something that we know we should do, through fear of what other people are going to think, or other people are going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And this was me with this podcast. I delayed it for the longest time, and recording my first episode last week. Within 5 minutes, I was like, man, I love this. I love this. And I was like, why am I waiting? It's super interesting. You still haven't owned the book is a #1 bestseller for those categories. You still shy away from it. So I want you to step into that as part of your identity, that you created a book that has impacted 700 people, 700 families. So it's not even 700 people; it's much more than that.
It is. Yeah.
But I want you to own that, because it is part of your story, and it's an incredible feat. How many people in the world could say that they're best-selling author in those categories?
No, it's true. I tell you what started it, right? And I know exactly what you're saying. What started it is because I right, truth be told, when that first happened, right, I was like, okay, yeah, no, the book is basically, I remember somebody saying to me, I said about the categories, and I said, yeah, but you can just say your book's a bestseller and just leave it as that. Marketing, just say the book became a bestseller, right? You don't need to go into the categories can be a bestseller. And then that got into me, I was like, okay, fine. And I said about the book's bestseller. And I think the first time I said it, I was like, okay, dude, what's one of your values? Integrity, be honest. Is that actually the truth? Right. And then basically what happened there was then it created a sour taste in my mouth because I already had a negative relationship with the whole best-selling status. I'm like, because I'm not in this for credibility, but I know what credibility can do in I know what power credibility. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then from then on, it's funny how you bring it up. So I talk about the book, and very rarely I'll say, yeah, it was a bestseller in 2 different categories and then list categories out. Whereas what I need to do is completely flip that and have the best relationship with it, because that is exactly what it done. And I just need to just move forward with that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, for me, it's a way to further push that book into the hands of the people that need it. So if anyone has experienced that level of trauma, sexual abuse in their life, this book is a must read. Must read. All the links and everything will be in the description and comments, so you can check out that book. But incredibly important. It's super interesting that obstacle for you became then the trigger for everything else that you've now achieved, which is huge. You've got the TEDx and so much more. So what are you working on at the moment?
Oh, mate, I literally when like somebody in Facebook DMs like, what are you working on at the moment, I go to type it and I'm like, oh mate, how long of like, it's just yeah. And that's not to sound, that's a good thing and a bad thing, because a lot of time you can say, well, if you're working on so many things, like what you're actually getting done, it's probably nothing, right? And there are a couple of things that I am slacking on for sure, but all of them are moving forward.
Yeah.
Some of them are moving forward very slow. Some of them move forward very fast. Like the business, for example, is moving forward quite fast.
Give me some details. What are you doing in the business?
So the business I work, and this is actually really cool. So within the last maybe 3 years, I'd say maybe 4 at a push, but probably about 3 years has been around working with essentially business coaching in a way, right? But it's more of a hybrid. So we used to have, my old business was Fit Story.
Yeah.
And I was working with fitness professionals, yes, to grow their business, but all of the talk, our language wasn't about growing your business, it was about leading with your story. Let's find out what your fit story is what we called it as, right? So that was our thing. Then basically what happened was COVID happened. The business slowed down. I felt massively misaligned to what I was actually doing with my old business partner, Matt, who still does stuff with it. But I felt massively misaligned, but I didn't know why. Looking back on it now is because I was doing no acting whatsoever. I stepped into entrepreneurship when I was 19 years old to finance a way to act. That was the thing. I've been an actor the longest out of everything since a kid. I haven't been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. It was acting, right? I was sat in front of the TV, wanted to be on the screen. That was my thing. And I've never felt more at home and alive than on stage. Like when I was at college and education, walking on stage to perform, it's the best thing ever. And Robert De Niro has one of my favorite quotes, and he says, acting is being able to step into the shoes of somebody else without having to face the consequences. And I was like, that's beautiful. So beautiful, right? But anyway, and then I realized I was like, okay, I've been in entrepreneurship for maybe 6 years now, 5 or 6 years, and I haven't been in front of the camera or been on stage. What on earth am I doing? Yeah. And then looking back, so I knew that much, but looking back on it now, coupled with that, it was also the fact that I wasn't actually truly leading with my story. I wasn't talking about sexual abuse. I didn't have the movement, because at the time it wasn't on par with what Fit Story was about. Yeah. I could now look at it and be like, well, I could have done it, right? But at the stage, it just wasn't happening. That's where the misalignment came.
Yeah.
And then that year after, that year break, was when a lot of the suicidal thoughts happened. That's when that's when everything went downhill. But whilst in a whole heap of shit, there was some diamonds. The diamond was the book. The diamond was the charity. And then I went back into I went back into coaching, yes, helping people basically break their silence and, you know, heal their wounds, and something that I coin now, which is own your story, own your life, right? Because a lot of people, they say about you, you know, Tony Robbins says, change your story, change your life. But I'm like, yes, that is very, very true. But a lot of people don't own their story,
Yeah.
especially survivors of abuse, right? They don't own their story because a lot of time their past abuser still owns their story, right? Their silence and their inner demons owns their story. So they need to own their story. And if they can own their story, then they can own their life, right? And when you can claim ownership, that's when a lot of powerful things happen. So then that is where that led into the business that I have now, which is helping survivors of abuse turn their story into a profitable business and movement. So we've got the first half of it, which is like, if you're trapped in your story, you know, read my book. That will help you break your silence. That will help you find some healing, you know, that help you own your story and shift your identity. And then if you're like, oh, okay, well, now I want to use my story, I want to help other women out there escape narcissistic and abusive relationships with their partners and refine themselves, right? Survivors of abuse, then great, I can help you take that, turn that into a coaching business and turn it into a movement and do things like TEDx, charity formation, charity partnership, like I've done, book, everything. So that's the business side of things.
Love it. Love it. It's really interesting where you visited that quote of like changing your story, because I picture that as like almost deflecting that story.
Yeah.
I like that you turn that then ownership of the story, because it's awareness and acceptance at the same time, not just trying to get away from it, which is super interesting.
Exactly.
That leads me into a question that's probably quite challenging. You mentioned the quote from De Niro there about stepping into the shoes of someone else. And that really raises some questions for me of acting, of like, why do you want to step into the shoes of someone else, but then also talk about ownership of your own story? Because in my mind, that's like two polar opposites in a way. So it's really interesting that you have your owning your story and you're so powerful in that, but then you're also exploring acting, which is getting away from Perry power. Does that make sense?
It does. I've never seen it in that light before, because the only light that I see it is that when I'm acting, I'm being able to bring truth to somebody else's story.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I see it about them. So it's like, so it's like, okay, so if there's a character, if there's a human being out there, so like, for example, you've got The Rock, right? Who's an absolute beast in business, and he's an absolute beast. He's got $7 Productions.
Who's that?
I know who is The Rock, right? And then he does a lot of entertainment movies, right? I see myself doing the same thing, right? We've got the business as well, and you've got the movement, and then you've got my production company. But what I focus solely on is finding people's stories out there in the world, right? Who've overcome amazing things, but they're just not a famous ex-president, or they're not a famous triathlete, right? For example, they can be in the mix, but I'm also talking about the people who haven't been heard yet, finding their stories and turning them into 90-minute feature films, right? Because it's like, everybody I talk to, I'm like, do you love watching true stories? And they're like, oh yeah, I love watching a true story. Why? Because you know it's happened, right?
Real.
Exactly. So that's why I love the acting part, is because I can step into the shoes of that person. And it's like I love my life. But there's sometimes, it's why I love method acting, because it's like, because I crave so much spontaneity and so much sort of like different things outside of my own world. When I can act and I can go into a character's life and seeing who their family is, seeing what their pains are and what their pleasures are, which is so different from my lifestyle, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. You're so different to me, you know? And that's what excites me, is because of the difference, not in a negative way, just not really in a positive, not in any way, really. I just think it's just amazing just to see from a different style, and then also helping them bring their story to the screen.
Yeah, love that. So as I know, you're aggressively seeking the acting and the directing, because we've spoken about it in detail a lot over the last year. And you've made those leaps, you've made so many changes to be able to heavily invest into this. What does that success actually look like for you in acting? Is it to become, the full-time job, the full-time, bills paid for you? Is it a certain amount of people impacted? Is it a certain amount of films to be involved in? Is it the empire? What for you would give you that fulfillment in acting?
I definitely feel like when I can say I'm happy doing what I'm doing within the world of acting, right? When I can actually say that phrase, it will be when I say full time, I don't mean it will be more on the full time spectrum as opposed to it being part time every now and then, right? But then when I say acting is more going to be full time, I don't mean that nothing else would exist. The movement will still exist. The business will still exist in regards to helping people break free and create movements. But it will just, I'll be overseeing the company as opposed to be working in it, right?
Yeah.
So all the things will still be in play. But in regards to specifically when I can say I'm an actor, because it would be acting and writing. Directing would be much later on in the career, because I don't know how much of a pain in the ass directing can be, because you're literally wearing every single hat under the sun.
Yeah.
But the acting and writing will be when I am working on movies every year, whether that is me acting in them. Well, it'd be a mixture of me acting in them and me overseeing it and financing. So it'd be the money too, right? So be like, okay, well, here's Janet's story. That's a powerful story, right? Like I got a client and her story would be an insane movie to watch, right? And it's just a journey about a girl being raised by a single mum who's completely abusive over her. And we're talking about physically, emotionally, and sexually, right? And about how she's cut ties from her. And now she's building a movement and she wants to coach for her mum, but anonymously, right? She wants to heal her mum's wounds. And I'm like, that would be an insane movie, true story movie to watch, right? And I want to be like, right, I want to finance that film to get made. But that's not current Perry. That's future Perry, right? When I've got the production company and I'm creating movies like that consistently every year, just getting them financed, getting them all out, all these true stories, right? Some of them I'll be acting in if I fit the character, some of them I won't. But when I'm at that stage where it's a thing that's consistent and I'm seeing these stories on my table, these scripts, right? These synopsis and stuff, and green lighting this one, red lighting this one. When I'm at that stage is when I can say, right, I'm happy where I am acting wise.
Love that. Thanks for sharing, dude. A challenging question. Do you think that you've encountered almost negativity or displeasure towards you becoming an actor because of how powerful your backstory is? Has anyone, you've gone for a role, you've done the auditions, you've gone through that process. Do you feel that anyone has turned you away, or has the power of your story affected you getting acting roles and success?
Not that I haven't been told to my face that. You can just pop my name in on social media and you'll be able to find it. So who knows? As far as I'm aware, not. There was first year of lockdown, I did an online acting intensive, and the guy who runs this big franchise company, very good. It was run by a woman. It was a business in coaching. He came in for a one-off workshop, right, on Zoom, and we was all telling about our things. And then I told him about what I'm doing, why I'm in the movie industry, because a lot, I'm not in the movie industry to act, right? I'm in the movie industry to do a lot more, and acting is just a byproduct of that, right? So I was saying to him about what I'm doing, and he was like, and he's a gay man who's very emotional, very loving guy, and he got upset because I'm a man, being a survivor and speaking about this, and he's like, you need to do this. He goes, but one word of advice is I wouldn't go around continuously leading with that in the movie industry. He goes, because producers and directors might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to hire this guy because that might bring a lot of baggage. And I heard that and I sat with it, and I've made up my mind since then. And it is that I don't give a fuck. So
I'm gonna go to.
Yeah. So I appreciate what he's saying, but I and if that is the case, And director's like, okay, Perry, I'm not working with you. I'm like, well, fantastic, because you just made me realize that I absolutely don't want to work with you. I don't care how big your name is in Hollywood, right? So I will create my movies and I'll be giving a voice to those people who need to hear it. And I want to know their stories before hiring them. Here's the difference. You see what I mean?
Very much.
And this is the thing. And I was so proud of myself when I thought of that, because I think before I broke that silence, I wasn't really somebody who would stand for something, right, so strongly, where I'm like, okay, well, if big things don't happen, that's, I'll be like, okay, no, let me just silence myself a little bit. If we go back to that time, I'd be like, okay, fine, I won't really leave with it in the movie industry. But because I stand for it so much, and because I've helped so many people, that's like reinforced the fact I'm like, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'm gonna shout it even louder this time, because like, it's insane how much sexual abuse there is in Hollywood.
Oh, no, that's,
And we all know this, but
some of the horror stories,
yeah,
horror stories. And yes, the reason I asked it was like, you're going up against some of the, one of the most difficult industries in a way, leading that charge, and it's inspiring, and I was just intrigued if you've already had some of that backlash. But like you say, for me, I see it as like, you're going to inevitably come up against those challenges, but it's even more of a reason to be leading that charge, because you
it's fantastic.
Because you need to, which is so powerful. I was going to ask if you have any advice for someone going through the process of these changes, career changes, and leaning into what they love. Because I think there's a lot of people that, let's say, stuck in the rat race. They're stuck in the cycle of life. The last 2 years have flown by. They're not happy with where they're at right now, some of the things they're working on. A lot of the time they have the idea of what they want to do, but they don't do anything. Do you have any advice for someone that on how to take that leap, how to make that change, how to actually, almost in a way, forget about the fears?
For me, and I will always go back to, and I'll blanket everyone with this. People say there might be anomalies with this, and maybe that's the case, but I'd rather say so and you come along and prove me wrong, type of thing, right? And it's if you're in a job that you hate, if you're in a rat race and you want something different, but you don't know what, the answer to the don't know what lies within your story, right? Lies it 100, because I will guarantee that if I was to sit down with that person who's not, and here's the thing, I don't believe you should settle for anything less. Even if you're in a job you're like, yeah, it's cool, I don't mind it, that's not good enough, right? Yeah. If I said to you, are you completely fulfilled with your life and living on purpose? Now that's a different question. If the answer is no, then we're going to come back to the same problem. If the answer is yes, then we don't need to be having this conversation. Or maybe we can, but it's like, okay, well, how can we amplify what you're already doing, right? But it's like, if the answer is no, then it's okay. For me personally, we can only talk upon our own experience. My experience is, if you want fulfillment and if you want to live on purpose, then you need to extract something from your story, right? In order to create the life that you want. Once you've done that, in the future, you then might pivot because you've grown, right? And then that message might then start to shift or expand or whatever it's going to be, right? But we're not talking about the future. We're talking about right now, which means you haven't gone through that process yet. So for me, it's like, you will go into your story and there will be a moment within your story. Like, so with the clients I take on, we go through a story deep dive, and within that story deep dive, we're trying to figure out where in that story deep dive are those catalysts of change, where those transformations, i.e., if you look in your life, there might be 3 big transformations that you've gone through within the last, for example, 27 years, right? So if I'm 27, so within the last 27 years, it might have been 3 big transformations, okay? And it's like, okay, well, which out of those 3 transformations, what is the one that sticks out the most, right? And you will know which one it is. You just will, right? And most of the time, it's the demons lurking in the closet that nobody knows about yet, right? Those catalysts to change. And then if you can then take that out and be like, okay, well, can you imagine changing the world with that? For some people, that's too big, right? So it's like, can you imagine helping one person get through what you went through before?
Yeah.
Then like, oh, well, I never thought about it. Like, I had a call with somebody last week. Never thought about coaching. She just wanted to have a talk with me. She works in a corporate job, right? She isn't happy. She's a mum, works in a corporate job, not happy. But she knows of her story. She has the awareness around her story. She's like, I know I want to do something with it. I know you wrote a book, Perry. She didn't know anything about my story. So I know you wrote a book. I just want to have a talk about the book. And we're talking about the book. I'm like, you realize a book is just like one thing out of this whole movement, right? So have you thought about coaching? She's like, I can't coach anyone. I was like, okay, you coached yourself for it though. She's like, what? So but you aren't the same person now as you were before, right? She's a survivor of abuse. You're not that same woman, are you? She goes, no. Said, you went from there to here. There is a process there. We need to figure out what that process is, right? But can you imagine helping one lady go from where they were in that abusive relationship to where they are now? And she just looked at me. She just froze, right? And this is the thing, that this is why it's a bit of a very long-winded way of saying is that I can guarantee for somebody who's in a job that they hate, right? And they don't have to be a survivor of abuse, by the way. They don't have to be a survivor of abuse.
Yeah.
Statistics are high, but they don't have to be. But there will still be something in their story, right, that they can help somebody else with that will bring them immense fulfillment and immense purpose and clarity and everything. And then that usually, if you can gain clarity on exactly what it is, that usually gets rid of a lot of fears, right? You may be like, oh, but imposter syndrome. Okay. Can I actually be a coach? But those things can get sorted out because that's just the how-tos, right? Yeah. But when you can actually fully step into your power of this is what I need to do, right? When you can be like, this is what I need to do, it's game over. Because you'll find a way for everything, for every hurdle that comes up, you'll find a way around it.
All questions get answered.
Exactly.
Love that. So powerful, man.
Yeah. So, but look within your story is a shortened answer.
Love it. Love it. And Perry, I got two more questions for you. Two more questions.
Is that it? You ain't got more?
Oh, we can do it, mate. I always yeah, you know that. This question I asked you this a little bit earlier, but I want to get it more specific, not just to your story, but what advice would your future self give you in this current moment? I'll repeat that. What advice would your future self give you in this current moment?
Oh, well, that's a difficult one. I wrote out they're like affirmations. I call them power statements. I was writing out them again this morning, and I was sitting there because there's some things that I need to work on at the moment, right? Because we're all human. Like, for example, in the morning, like in the morning, I don't get up when my phone alarm goes off. I hit the snooze button a couple of times. Sometimes I might sleep in 2 hours later, right? I'm not happy with that, but I'm definitely in the routine of doing it. So it's hard to break it, right? So that's one thing that I need to sort out is what I feel like, and I don't know if this is my age, but I'm definitely leaning more towards this, right? I've always been an excited to be dad, right? I can't wait to be a father, right? I can wait to be one, right? I can definitely wait to be one because I'm not in a I can definitely wait to be one, but the excitement is there. And what I've caught myself thinking this recently, where if I have a bad habit and I'm like, are you okay with having that bad habit as a father? Right? Because your kids are going to see that bad habit, right? So what you're then saying is that you're okay with your kids adopting those bad habits. Yeah. But I've noticed that, and it's very weird how this happens. So I noticed that subtly, right? I never actually said to that thing that I just said there. I never actually had that full conversation. It was more of I had a bad habit. I'm like I don't want my kids sort of like picking up on that. Then I in my business program, like my business coach, there was a mastermind call last Friday as a mindset one, and the guy on there, he was like, and it was just timing of it because I was thinking about the father thing, and he said on there, he goes, from before last June, he goes, I would always hit my, and I hadn't told him about anything, what I just said. Yeah. So it's very weird how this happened. He goes, before last June, he goes, I was always hitting my snooze on my phone in the morning, right? I hit it, maybe an hour or two goes by, then I wake up and I'm even more tired because now you've got broken sleep, right? And he goes, and then what changed was, I then said to myself, when you're a father, obviously you're happy for your kids to see you being a father to continuously hit snooze on their phone, and it's okay to break the promise that you held to yourself. So what you're saying is that you're okay for your kids to grow up continuously breaking the promises that they are making to themselves. He goes, because it's not just hitting the snooze button, it's other things too that I do in my day. I might be like, for example, I might lie about something. I might, get out of a call, right, by giving a fake excuse, right? And I might think that's okay. But is that okay? Because what you've just done is you're telling your son and your daughter that it's okay to tell a white lie to get out of something, right? But is it? Or is it more important to be a man or a woman of integrity and honesty, right? And he doesn't have kids, by the way, right? And then I was like, that's powerful. And that resonates with somebody who can't wait to be a parent, of course, right? Yeah. For somebody who doesn't care about kids, it's not going to work. But for me, I can't wait to have kids when I'm older, right? And I'm like, so that the only thing I can think of to come forward with is that the future version of me is that dad, right? And it's coming back onto me and being like, start being a dad that you want to be today.
Love that.
Maybe. And I feel like that is what would work for me, because I don't want my kids picking up on bad habits from me.
Love that. I want to help you in the clarification of that, because I think this will help. There's a concept of your captain. So your captain can either be the best version of yourself. So this is, you're doing everything right. You act how that person that you want to be. You're doing everything. It can also be someone that you just sincerely look up to with everything that you do. Example for you could probably be The Rock, because I know that, he's that guy on that pedestal for you. So the question can then be, what would my captain do in this instance? Mm-hmm. So what would my best self do? What would The Rock do? And by positioning it that way, mm-hmm. it gives you the answer every single time. Because then what you can do is the goal is to align your behaviors and ultimately your identity with your captain, because that'll be then you acting as your best self. And that will help you ultimately achieve all those goals that you have, be the person that you want to be, and ultimately for you, be the best father that you can be. So yeah, maybe positioning that rather than being the best father, because you're obviously not at that stage yet, but positioning that as the captain. And then as fingers crossed, hopefully as you have kids, as get a little bit older, you can transition that into then being the father.
I like that. Good man. Appreciate it.
That'll help. Yeah. That's always helped me through some of my my coaching as well. So it's the captain. So last one, Mr. Perry Powell, best name in the business. And
keep on saying it, bro.
Any final thoughts, any final lessons that you'd like to share, or some things that have been highlighted to you during this conversation today that you weren't expecting?
The first thing I'll say is that if you are listening to this and you are living in silence, right? And for this specific example, we use some type of abuse. And if you want to be even more sort of clearer on that, then we can say if you did go through child sexual abuse when you were younger, that's what my whole movement is about, and you haven't broken a silence on that yet, you may have listened to this podcast and you may have been like, right, well, Perry broke his silence really at the business mastermind. Moving forward from that and learning what I've learned and helping the people that I've helped since then, I wouldn't recommend for that to be the first instance of breaking the silence. I would recommend you break the silence to yourself first in as many ways as possible before you then tell somebody else. Because then what happens is, instead of telling somebody else on silence breaking number 1, you tell somebody on silence breaking number 31, and you've broken a silence to yourself 30 different ways. You've written it out. You've done a poem. You've written a song. You choreographed a dance piece, right? You said it to yourself in the mirror. You've done a piece of artwork, right? And you're allowing these emotions that have a lot of control over you and go through these different forms of expression of this story, right? Because yes, a story is words, but behind those words are emotions. So you could say, well, me releasing these emotions is me sharing my story. It is. Verbal is just one form of communication, right? So if we go through that and then you then share your story on time number 16 or time number 25, what you would then find is that you're not sharing your story waiting on a certain type of response from somebody else. And that is a lot of issues that people, it's like they will share their story one time and then they're not believed. They'll never share it ever again. Yeah. Right. But you can't control somebody else's actions or their reaction to your story. So you must share it from a place of not, I hope they believe me or I hope that they accept me. You must do it. I'm sharing my story because it needs to get out there. I'm sharing my story because somebody needs to hear it. And that is a difference in power. But where you get there is because you need to own your story first, right? And one good, very strong way of owning your story first is sharing your story to yourself in so many different ways. Because it's not just sharing your story in so many different ways. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that process. There's a lot of questions that you ask yourself. There's a lot of leading with curiosity. There's a lot of finding out things, right? Throughout those ways. And then when you can get to the stage, then you can share your story for other people. So that's the first thing that I want to mention at the end here. And then for two more things. The other one is if you then want to share your story for other people, that you can, right? A lot of people want to look for a specific method. And while I said there are ways that you can do things, right? I always believe that the need of doing something always trumps the how, right? So if you're like, right, I want to get my story out there and share it to others, right? Focus on that 100%. Don't focus on 30% and then the 70% is okay, but how do I do it? What type of content do I write? At what times of day? All these questions then make you procrastinate and you don't do it. Just when you've got this need to share your story, I want you to share your story in as many times as possible, in as many ways as possible, everywhere you can. I broke my silence, was that 5 years ago? 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago, 2000. Well, I shared it actually to my girlfriend in the end of 2017, right? Then I did that in the beginning of 2018. So 5 years ago is when I actually broke my silence. If you go onto my social media and you just scroll, you'll be scrolling for a long time and you'll see that I share my story in a different angle nearly every single day of the week, right? Nearly every single day I share my story, but in a different way, right? And I still do it. And I've never, ever had a complaint, right? Oh, you share too much of your story. Never had anything, right? Because it's like, let's go back to The Rock, right? I look up to The Rock. Granted, I don't know too much about his person. I know his story to a certain degree, but he hasn't actually been, like, I know for a fact there's things in his closet that he hasn't shared, right? But I also don't have 150, 200 million followers on my Instagram. So I'm not going to pretend that, I'm but I can confidently say, me being me now, I would still be sharing. Of course I would be, right? So, but anyway, that's kind of digressing a little bit. But if he was to come out and share raw truths of his story, I would be pumped to read that every single day. And that's not because it's The Rock, that is because it's someone I look up to.
Yeah.
See? So there's a lot of people who look up to me, which I'm very fortunate for. There's a lot of people that look up to you, whoever's listening, and to you, Sam. There's a lot of people who look up to all of us, right? So if we can share our story every single day, people will absolutely love it. And not only does it help them overcome whatever they need to overcome, not only does it help you attract new clients consistently, which 100% does, but it just makes the world a better place, and if you heal, then your family heals and everybody around you heal at the same time.
Yeah.
And the last thing is that if you are going through a bad day today, then know that if you can get through a bad day, then you'll be on your way to a brighter tomorrow. It happens all the time.
Love that. Love that.
That's it.
So powerful. Perry, what is the best way for someone to find you? I know that you're on all socials, all the links and everything will be down below. But what is the best place for someone to connect with you?
If it's for a conversation, then Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger. I go through my DMs every single day. Like actually, the end of last week, I answered somebody's DM and she asked me a question about a story and then I answered it. And then she came back to me with a screenshot of a page in my book. And in that screenshot, I was like, why'd she send me this? And then she goes, you're actually a man of your word. You don't understand how much this means to people who need it the most. And in the page that she sent me, I say in one of the paragraphs, now, it was like, blah, 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 blah. Now I make sure that I respond back to every single DM. Because if somebody's sharing their story with me, then I'm honored. And the least that I can do is give them my time of day and my heart and my love and respond back. And so the reason I'm highlighting that is because if you do want to have a conversation about your story, then if you reach out to me on socials, then I will 100% be answering back to you.
Love that. Man of your word. think we can definitely say that. Before we just wrap this up, I just want to express my gratitude, one, for you for coming on this podcast and just joining me for this conversation, but two, and most importantly, for doing what you do, ultimately sharing your story and confronting the challenges that you've had over the years, and then flipping that to be able to serve and impact the amount of people that you have. I have no doubts the next 5-10 years, you're going to 100 times, 1,000 times, million times the amount of people that you've impacted already. And I just can't wait to be a witness on that journey that you're on, and to see where it's going to go, because you're a huge inspiration of mine, and someone I'm very fortunate to call a friend.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Sam.
So thank you for being here, buddy.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. This has been a great podcast. I'm happy to be. Am I number 2? Is it number 2?
Yes, sir. Number 2.
Second best. My favorite one.
Hey, not about the numbers, mate. No, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story.
No problem. Anytime. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, 100%.